The 1980 D United States of America Kennedy half dollar is a circulating coin struck at the Denver Mint, bearing the mint mark, D, on the obverse just to the right of President John F. Kennedy's neck truncation. The Kennedy half dollar series began in 1964 as a tribute to President Kennedy after his assassination, and by 1980 the coin had evolved into a familiar copper-nickel-clad issue. The obverse of the 1980 D half dollar was designed by Gilroy Roberts, chief engraver of the U.S. Mint, and features a distinguished left-facing portrait of Kennedy. Above his head arcs the national motto, "In God We Trust," divided with the words split by the portrait, "In God" to the left and "We Trust" to the right, an arrangement that is iconic within the series. Beneath the bust sits the date 1980, indicating its year of striking, while the designer's initials, GR, appear subtly on the truncation of the bust. The coin's reverse, created by Frank Gasparo, depicts the heraldic presidential coat of arms, a bold eagle with outstretched wings, holding an olive branch in the right talon symbolizing peace and 13 arrows in the left talon symbolizing preparedness for defense. The eagle's chest bears a vertically striped shield, representing the president's role in supporting the nation, while above the eagle floats a radiant glory of light surrounding a constellation of 13 stars, symbolizing the original colonies. Surrounding the central design is the legend, United States of America, across the top, and the denomination, half dollar, across the bottom, all framed by a ring of 50, representing the 50 states, tying the symbolism of the nation's unity together in a symmetrical and authoritative layout. The 1980 D half dollar is composed of a copper-nickel-clad structure, 75% copper and 25% nickel on the outer layers, bonded to an inner core of pure copper, resulting in a coin weighing 11.34 grams with a diameter of 30.6 millimeters and a reeded edge of 150 reeds. This composition had been standard since 1971, when the Mint ended the use of the 40% silver alloy previously found in half dollars from 1965 to 1970. The Denver Mint produced a large mintage of approximately 33 million pieces, making the 1980 D a common date in circulation and easily obtainable for collectors today. Most examples show typical strike strength, though some Denver issues may show slightly weaker hair detail above Kennedy's ear due to production speeds and die wear. The coin's appearance, when freshly struck, displays a bright silvery luster typical of clad coinage, though circulated examples often develop a muted, grayish tone with surface contact marks from use in commerce. Despite the half dollar's declining circulation use after the 1970s, many 1980 D issues still entered commercial channels, though large quantities were stored in bank vaults or coin rolls. In terms of numismatic interest, the 1980 D Kennedy half dollar is classified as a modern common date coin, but it remains an essential part of a complete Kennedy series collection. Its typical value in circulated condition equals face value, 50 cents, while mint state examples carry modest premiums. Mint state, MS 65, examples are affordable, but MS 67 and above become significantly more desirable due to the difficulty of finding perfect surfaces and top-tier luster on a high-mintage clad coin from this era. Denver minted coins tend to show stronger strikes than their Philadelphia counterparts, though this can vary case by case. Collectors often look for brilliant luster, clean fields, and sharp hair detail when selecting higher-grade specimens. There are no major varieties for the 1980 D, but minor die cracks, die polish lines, and small misalignments occasionally appear and can interest specialists who study die states or collect manufacturing anomalies. The motto, "In God We Trust," prominently featured on the obverse, forms a symbolic anchor connecting the coin's message to American heritage, and its position beside Kennedy's portrait was intended to echo both traditional coinage layout and the solemnity of the memorial design first issued in 1964. The phrase has appeared on U.S. coins since the 19th century and reflects the nation's historical and cultural values, making its presence on the 1980 D half dollar both conventional and meaningful. Many collectors appreciate how the motto balances aesthetically with the portrait's contours, giving the obverse a harmonious appearance that has remained essentially unchanged across decades. Today, the 1980 D. Kennedy half-dollar remains a piece of everyday American history, an artifact from a time when half-dollars still saw moderate circulation and the Denver Mint was producing millions of clad coins to meet national demand. While not rare, it holds educational value for those studying modern minting techniques, U.S. monetary history, or the evolution of the Kennedy series. It is also a popular coin for beginning collectors because it offers historical depth, elegant design, accessible pricing, and a tangible connection to a significant era in U.S. history. As part of a complete year-end Mitmark set, the 1980 D stands as a representative example of late 20th century American coinage, blending tradition, symbolism, and the technological precision of modern mint. The next top. The 1982 D United States Kennedy half-dollar is a coin that occupies a somewhat unusual and historically noteworthy place in modern American coinage because although half-dollars had been a standard denomination since the nation's earliest years, demand for them had already dropped dramatically by the early 1980s, leading the U.S. Mint to strike them only in relatively limited quantities and mainly for collectors rather than general circulation. In fact, 1982 was one of the years in which no Kennedy half-dollars were distributed into general commerce, and the Denver Mint's output was produced specifically for mint sets, making the 1982 D a collectible piece with significance tied to the broader story of the half-dollar's declining role in everyday transactions. The coin features the familiar Kennedy obverse, created by Chief Engraver Gilroy Roberts, showing a left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, with the inscriptions Liberty around the rim, the motto, "In God We Trust," divided to the left and right of the portrait, and the year 1982 at the bottom. The Denver Mint's D mint mark appears just above the date on the truncation of the bust. Although the user mentioned library full, it's worth noting that the correct wording on the coin is Liberty, which is intentionally spaced so that Kennedy's profile slightly overlaps the letters. This is part of the original artistic design, and not an error. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, displays the modified presidential seal, a heraldic eagle with a shield on its chest, clutching an olive branch in its right talon and a bundle of arrows in its left, surrounded by 50 stars and the legend, United States of America, above and half-dollar below, a powerful symbol of national sovereignty. The 1982 D half-dollar is composed of the standard clad alloy introduced in 1971, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its distinctive silvery appearance without containing actual silver. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, has a 30.6 millimeters diameter, reeded edge, and carries the same specifications maintained for decades of Kennedy half-dollars. Because the Mint did not strike proof half-dollars in 1982, proof sets were not produced that year. The 1982 D and its companion 1982 P struck in Philadelphia exist only as mint set coins, granting them a unique status among modern issues, and collectors often seek them in high grade, especially MS 65 and higher, where attractive luster and clean surfaces can significantly improve desirability. Some minor varieties exist, typically related to strike characteristics rather than major double dies or design anomalies, though collectors sometimes examine them for subtle differences in mintmark shape or die polish lines. The motto, "In God We Trust," located on the obverse, is clear and sharply rendered on well-struck examples, and because half-dollars from this period were struck primarily for collectors rather than heavy circulation, most surviving specimens show better than average detail, though weak strikes at Denver were not uncommon in the early 1980s, making fully defined hairlines on Kennedy's portrait a desirable attribute. Market values for the 1982 D Kennedy half-dollar remain modest in circulated grades due to relatively high survival rates, but premium mint state specimens, especially those graded MS 66 or MS 67 by major grading services, can command higher prices because high-grade examples are less common than raw mintage numbers suggest. The challenge lies in finding coins with clean fields free of handling marks from the mint set packaging. Historically, this coin also illustrates the transitional period in U.S. coinage when half-dollars were withdrawing from everyday circulation. By the early 1980s, Most Americans rarely encounter them in change. Casinos were shifting to other tokens, and banks requested fewer of them, so the 1982 D represents not only a collectible item but also a snapshot of the fading commercial role of the denomination. Today, the 1982 D Kennedy half-dollar appeals to both new and advanced collectors for its combination of limited distribution, classic portrait, symbolic Cold War era imagery, and its place in the narrative of America's modern circulating coinage, making it a small but meaningful piece of monetary the next top. The 1984 D Kennedy half-dollar, minted at the Denver Mint and bearing the D mint mark, is part of the long-running Kennedy half-dollar series, first introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy following his assassination. And the 1984 issue represents a period in the series when the coin was produced primarily for general circulation but saw relatively limited use by the public because half-dollars were no longer common in everyday commerce, which means most surviving examples are found in circulated condition, while higher-grade pieces are typically sourced from mint sets or those saved directly from bank rolls. The obverse of the 1984 D half-dollar features the well-known left-facing portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts, with the inscriptions Liberty arcing across the top and the phrase, "In God We Trust," placed below, separated by Kennedy's neck truncation and positioned on either side of the central portrait. The date 1984 appears at the bottom, struck in a font consistent with earlier years in the series. Although some collectors misread or mishear the word Liberty as library, the correct inscription is Liberty, one of the core textual elements present on most U.S. circulating coinage. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, depicts the presidential seal, a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings clutching an olive branch in its right talon, and a bundle of arrows in its left, symbolizing the nation's dual commitment to peace and readiness for defense. The eagle's breast is covered by a striped shield, and it is surrounded by a circle of 50 stars representing the 50 states, with the inscriptions, United States of America, along the upper rim and half-dollar along the lower rim. Like all circulating half-dollars minted between 1971 and the early 2000s, the 1984 D is made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two nickel-copper alloy layers, resulting in a total weight of 11.34 grams, a diameter of 30.6 millimeters, and a reeded edge, characteristics that have remained consistent for decades except for special silver collector editions in some years. The Denver Mint struck approximately $26.2 million half-dollars in 1984, a moderate mintage for the series, though still high enough that the coin is not considered rare. However, high-grade mint state examples can be scarcer because most coins entered circulation and experienced handling wear. Among collectors, typical circulation-grade 1984 D half-dollars are worth their face value or slightly more, while coins grading MS 64 to MS 66 hold greater appeal, and exceptional gems in MS 67 or higher are considerably harder to find due to issues like weak strikes, bag marks, and light scuffing commonly seen on coins produced during this era. Although there are no major celebrated die varieties or dramatic mint errors specific to 1984 D, collectors sometimes encounter minor anomalies such as die clashes, small die cracks around Kennedy's profile or the lettering, or slightly off-center strikes, all of which can add interest but typically carry modest premiums unless the error is large or visually striking. In terms of historical context, the coin represents a period of transition in American coin usage. By the mid-1980s, half-dollars had fallen out of widespread circulation, with the public using quarters and dollar bills far more frequently, leading to declining mintages in subsequent decades and contributing to the half-dollar becoming a denomination mostly encountered by collectors, casinos, and certain regional banks. For numismatists, the 1984 D is often collected as part of a Dayton Mintmark series set, and while it is not among the rarest issues, it illustrates the manufacturing standards and political symbolism characteristic of the Kennedy series, featuring strong patriotic imagery and the enduring motto, "In God We Trust," which since its adoption on U.S. coins has reflected national identity and continuity. For new collectors, the 1984 D serves as an accessible entry point into the Kennedy half-dollar series, providing a piece of American monetary history with a connection to mid-20th century political memory, U.S. Mint technological evolution, and the continued cultural significance of the next top. The 1985 United States half dollar, minted at the Denver Mint, is part of the long-running John F. Kennedy half-dollar series, a coin first introduced in 1964 as a national memorial to the 35th president following his assassination in 1963, and the 1985 issue continues that tradition both artistically and historically. Struck in copper-nickel-clad composition, outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The coin weighs 11.34 grams, has a reeded edge, measures 30.6 millimeters in diameter, and carries the D mint mark on the obverse just above the date, signifying production in Denver. On the obverse, designed by Gilroy Roberts, the coin features a left-facing bust of President John F. Kennedy, a design characterized by smooth sculptural lines, a deep neckline, sharply defined hair when well struck, and the motto, "In God We Trust," placed below the portrait in a balanced, symmetrical layout. Above Kennedy's head appears the word Liberty, spaced widely around the top rim of the coin, a design philosophy intended to evoke both dignity and monumentality. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, displays a modified presidential seal, with a heraldic American eagle clutching an olive branch in the right talon, and a bundle of arrows in the left, symbolizing the nation's commitment to peace and readiness for defense. The eagle's wings spread wide beneath a field of 50 stars, encircling the design to represent the states, while the mottos, United States of America and half dollar, form the outer inscriptions, completing one of the most iconically American reverse designs in U.S. coinage. In 1985, Kennedy half dollars were produced solely for circulation, as no proof versions were minted due to the U.S. Mint not issuing proof sets in 1985, and this absence makes circulation quality and high-grade mint state examples of the year particularly interesting to collectors. The Denver Mint struck over 18 million pieces, a moderate mintage compared with earlier decades, with most coins entering banking channels but seeing relatively limited everyday use, as by the mid-1980s the half dollar no longer circulated heavily in commerce, often remaining in bank vaults or being used only in casinos and special banking transactions. Typical circulation finds show weak strikes, bag marks, and softness in the hair details above Kennedy's ear, while high-grade survivors, especially MS 65 and above, are noticeably scarcer because the Denver Mint's production quality and handling at the time often resulted in contact marks and subdued luster. Collectors therefore prize coins with strong luster, minimal abrasions, full detail in the hair curls, and a clean cheek on the portrait, which is traditionally the highest point and most sensitive area for wear. Although the coin has no silver content and carries only modest monetary value in circulated condition, usually face value to a small premium, its significance lies in its representation of American political history, mid-20th century design, and the long cultural legacy of the Kennedy Memorial Series, which continues to be collected widely even by beginners due to its affordability and connection to national memory. For numismatists, the 1985 half dollar offers insight into the Mint's transition era of the 1980s, when production shifted increasingly toward lower circulating denominations, and half dollars became more collector-oriented rather than tools of everyday commerce. The combination of its distinctive Denver strike characteristics, its status as a no-proof year circulation issue, its continuation of one of America's most important commemorative turn circulation coin series, and its identifiable motto, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" inscriptions makes the 1985 half dollar a small but meaningful reflection of late 20th century U.S. minting, historical remembrance, and national the next top. The 1986 United States of America half dollar, commonly called the 1986 Kennedy half dollar, is a circulation issue coin struck at the Denver Mint, identifiable by the small d mint mark located on the obverse, just below President John F. Kennedy's bust near the truncation of the neck. Like all Kennedy has issued from 1971 onward, the 1986 piece is composed of copper-nickel clad, consisting of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving it a total weight of 11.34 grams, a diameter of 30.61 millimeters, and a reeded edge. The obverse was designed by Gilroy Roberts, the chief engraver who created the original Kennedy portrait immediately after the president's 1963 assassination. It features the left-facing profile of Kennedy, the motto, "In God We Trust," the word liberty arching around the top, and the date 1986 at the bottom. On many examples, hobbyists refer to Liberty Full or full details to describe particularly sharp, well-struck letters, but the Kennedy half-dollar series does not have an official full Liberty designation like Buffalo nickels or Mercury dimes do. Instead, collectors focus on strike quality, luster, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal. The reverse, designed by Frank Asparo, shows a heraldic eagle adapted from the presidential seal, with a shield on its breast, an olive branch and arrows in its talons, a ring of 50 stars, and the inscriptions, United States of America and $50. In 1986, the Denver Mint produced a large mintage, over 15 million coins, reflecting the fact that Kennedy halves were still being created for circulation, even though actual public use was sharply declining, with most pieces entering Federal Reserve storage or being sold to collectors. As a result, the majority of 1986 DFs found today are common in circulated grades and hold mostly face value to small premium worth unless exceptionally preserved. In mint state, however, especially MS 65 and higher, the coin becomes more desirable because fewer examples were saved in pristine rolls, and the Denver Mint strike quality varied, making sharply struck, clean coins more collectible. The coin has no silver content and does not belong to the special commemorative issues released in 1986, such as the Statue of Liberty Silver Dollar, yet it remains part of the historically significant Kennedy series, one of America's most widely collected modern coins. Those studying varieties note that 1986 DFs do not have major recognized double die or repunched mintmark errors, but minor die cracks, die deterioration doubling, or small planchet flaws can exist and may interest specialists. When grading these coins, experts look for contact marks on Kennedy's cheek, an area that easily shows scratches, as well as clarity in the hair, strong luster, minimal abrasions, and clean fields. Because Kennedy half-dollars continued to be issued mainly for collectors after 2001, the 1986 D stands as one of the later mass-minted circulation-era issues, making it a common but historically interesting piece representing the transition of the half-dollar from a once-popular denomination to a largely collector-focused series. For new hobbyists, the 1986 D is often one of the earliest and easiest coins to acquire when assembling a complete Kennedy half-dollar Dayton Mintmark set, and for those interested in modern U.S. numismatics, it illustrates the typical clad coin minting standards, motifs, and economic changes of the late 20th century United States. The next top. The 1991 D United States half-dollar is part of the long-running Kennedy half-dollar series, first introduced in 1964 to honor President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in November 1963. The 1991 D coin was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mintmark placed on the obverse side just below Kennedy's neck truncation and above the date. Like all circulation strike half-dollars minted from 1971 onward, the 1991 D is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy, 75% copper and 25% nickel on the outer layers, bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its silver-colored appearance while being far less valuable in metal content than the earlier 90% silver, 1964, or 40% silver-clad issues, 1965 to 1970. The obverse was designed by Gilroy Roberts, featuring a left-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy, sharply detailed hair, and a smooth field around the portrait. Prominently placed to the left of Kennedy's profile is the motto, "In God We Trust," a phrase that has appeared on U.S. coinage for over a century and symbolizes the national heritage of religious and cultural identity embedded in American history. On Kennedy halves, the motto visually balances the Liberty inscription that arcs across the top of the coin. The reverse design, created by Frank Asparo, depicts the presidential coat of arms, a heraldic eagle clutching an olive branch in one talon and arrows in the other, symbolizing peace and military readiness. The reverse is surrounded by a ring of 50 stars, representing the states, with the inscriptions, United States of America and $50. A distinguishing feature of the Kennedy $50 is its large, bold layout, making the inscriptions and motifs easy to read even after circulation wear. The Denver Mint struck over 15 million 1991 $50, meaning the coin is generally common in circulated condition and readily found in coin shops, bulk coin lots, or inherited collections. These coins were minted primarily for general circulation, although $50 saw decreasing daily use in commerce throughout the 1980s and 1990s, which led many freshly minted coins to go directly into storage or collector sets rather than entering circulation. Numismatically, the 1991 D is valued mostly for its place in the long Kennedy series rather than rarity. Typical circulated examples hold face value, while uncirculated, mint state specimens, especially coins graded MS 65 and above, carry modest collector premiums due to their luster, strike quality, and preservation. The coin's cultural significance is tied not only to Kennedy's legacy, but to the American tradition of commemorating national unity and historical memory through its coinage. For collectors, the 1991 D serves as a representative modern-clad $50, a reminder of the era when the U.S. Mint continued producing $50 in large numbers, even though public usage declined. Its inscriptions, Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1991, along with the presidential seal, reflect the ongoing themes of American identity, liberty, national trust, federal continuity, and symbolic reverence for a leader who left a profound impact on the nation. Overall, the 1991 D. Kennedy $50 represents a blend of mid-20th century American history, modern minting technology, and long-standing national iconography captured in a durable, everyday coin that continues to interest collectors decades after its production.